I want to think about that. I want to think about what are the implications there. I'm not just, I think the hubris, the pride of thinking, can we do it, goes against should we do it? And I think so often as people, we've been built in this consumer model, like you said, this unchallenged technology and progress is good.
Right.
And let's just go along with it. Where if you take the full sum of what the internet has meant, how many men have had their lives derailed and how many families have had their lives derailed? And we're back. Welcome to the Unyielding podcast, where we try to talk about anything and everything from a Christian perspective. My name is Mike. This is my friends. We want to try to approach the whole world from a distinctly Christian perspective. And so that's kind of what this podcast does. We talk about anything in culture, in life. We believe that all of the world belongs to God, that He created everything. And so we want to bring everything under His lordship, under His dominion. And so that's our goal with this podcast. And so today we're going to be talking about technology, and more specifically, AI, artificial intelligence. How should Christians be thinking about artificial intelligence? That's kind of something that's coming quick. I think that we're not even really, many people haven't really even thought about it. It feels like sci-fi. It feels like the future. And so we want to just kind of think primitively early on about what are some of the thoughts that Christians should be having? What are some of the ways that we should be approaching this? What are some of the principles that we should be applying to AI? So let me pray, and then we'll get into it, and we'll just have a conversation. Father, we love you. We thank you, Lord, for that this is your world, Lord, that you made it, God, that you rule over it, Lord. We take so much peace and comfort, Lord, in knowing, God, that you are in control. And so, God, we just pray, God, again, over this podcast, Lord, you're in control here, that you come and have your way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, so why don't we just first start off by saying, what is artificial intelligence? Because I think a lot of times when people think about it, when they talk about it, it's not totally clear what we're talking about. Like, it just feels like, is it like just a better version of Google? Is it like just kind of the internet 2.0? What is artificial intelligence? What's the idea behind it, and where is it going? So, what's artificial intelligence?
Okay.
Well, somebody like Bo, I know you know better than I know what artificial intelligence is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like for a long time there was the idea that a computer could do things in an automated way, and it could do things, with images, with text, with search. We've all known that for a long time, that there was just the ability for the computers to automate things, right? And then there was this concept of even like machine learning or machine vision, where it could spot things automatically in images and in text, and it could read text in. So it's like there was this progression where computers got more and more capable with dealing with content and things like that. I think the thing that we've seen recently is what people are calling AI now is largely these large language models. So something like ChatGPT and the other ones, where there's really been kind of this explosion of their capability because of some advances in the approach. So and we don't need to get too deep into that, but there's been kind of a change in approach using these transformers and creating these large language models, and that's allowed now this way for us to interact with the software that gives like a very easy entry point for people, but it's also made the capability of them really practical for text and image and video and all these things, and their capability has just exploded. It's become something we could never have predicted before.
Is a large language model where it's aggregating all the data and information out there and presenting, like putting it together into a cohesive kind of clear direction? Is that what you mean by like by large language? Is it taking all the information and synthesizing it?
Yeah, like massive amounts of information. It's being trained on that. It's being pre-trained on it. And I'm not an expert on AI, but it's a massive amount of information that these transformers, these models are being trained on. And then from that point forward, when you present a prompt to it or you present a task to it, it's able to make use of that incredible amount of information very quickly because of the way that these transformers work. And so that has been, I think, from my understanding, the major advancement. And that's why over the last like year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is, that it's gone from being something where people were like, maybe a machine could do that. Maybe AI will be something that's impactful, to being a real practical change in our society for a lot of people.
Yeah, like most people, I think a lot of people would prefer to use ChatGPT to ask a question than Google. And I think Google's actually probably moving towards that as well in how their Google search works. But it feels more comfortable to ask ChatGPT a question and how it interacts with you. You can be iterative. It seems like it's thinking about your question versus just you blankly ask a question. You know, everybody's had the experience when you're searching something on Google and you type in what you want and then it just gives you something you're like, that isn't what I wanted.
Right.
But ChatGPT feels a little different than that.
Yeah. So real quick, just on Google though, because that's been my experience so far. ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, those are kind of the three, I think, AI tools that I've used the most. Google, you would search and it would give you, the top 10 websites or whatever, and then you could go through, different pages of it. And increasingly, that was an incredibly powerful tool, still is an incredibly powerful tool. But then like the things would get diluted as people learn how to like game the system.
They're asking to be ranked higher.
Google.
So yeah.
And then I'd have to go look through to really find my information, where ChatGPT, you type in your question and it aggregates and gives you much closer to the synthesized of taking those top 10 pages or those top 100 pages and giving you the clear information. So it's been so far it's been a really powerful, helpful, useful tool for a lot of different things, I think. So that's been, I think, part of the difference there is some kind of learning thing, some kind of where it is almost its own synthesis intelligence assistant. It feels like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I think AI is what we're talking about now is something that feels like intelligence when you interact with it, right? And that I'm sure we'll get into is both in some ways the really impactful benefit, and it's also the danger,
which is the stage we're at right now is where this does feel like a step forward in helpfulness in accomplishing the goals or what I'm trying to accomplish or what I'm trying to do in my own personal life. It hasn't been yet. It hasn't been incredibly disruptive. It's mostly been useful. Now, I think that's going to filter out in different kinds of ways. But
I think for younger people, it's already been quite disruptive.
Really?
Yeah.
So like education, school?
Yeah.
Primarily? Okay. So yeah, like you hear about people like, I'm going to download my textbook into ChatGPT and give me the cliff notes or give me the things that, that likely to be on the test and just synthesize it down. So something like that certainly has been happening. You have a lot of people who have been like, writing papers and that kind of stuff that ChatGPT, write me a paper on the War of 1812.
Or sermons.
Yeah. In sermons, I can tell you for sure that there have been a lot of people, pastors have been using it. And I think the ethical implications of how do you use a tool like this in writing a sermon, or, like John Piper had that thing where he had it, give me a prayer on this in the spirit of D.A. Carson or whatever. And ChatGPT gave a prayer. Is that a prayer, right? I mean, is that like, so there's interesting ethical implications there.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out too that we're still in the primitive early stages of AI and how it's being presented and how humans are interacting with it. Like right now, it seems like the only example we're coming up with is, hey, write a essay paper.
Right.
You got Google 2.0 version of our search history, but the implications of what AI could become in the future have vast, overreaching, way past what that looks like.
Yeah, and I think
that's
that's really the interesting question. Like, where is AI going? And partly it's going so fast that I think we're a little bit ill-equipped or unprepared to know where it's going. And I think, when you talk about the futurists or the people who really work on deep AI and like are trying to understand what are if all of the implications, they're divided. There's a lot of questions that they have, but a lot of the people who have been working on AI for a long time have deep concerns that this is going to present some kind of existential crisis for people because of where it's going. And I think that's why I want to have the conversation today, in part because I want us as Christians to be thinking about what are the principles at work here before we get there, because sometimes you get there and it's too late. If you just start kind of going with wherever this takes us, I think that's part of what would be the most alarming part about AI and the future of AI. So I think there's 3 stages that people have talked about in regards to AI that we're in the first stage, which is the narrow AI. And the idea is that, just like what we talked about, where AI's capabilities are doing single tasks really well. So you can have a specialized AI that kind of understands. Like I was just in San Francisco last week with my boys. We went to a Padre game at Oracle Park in San Francisco. And there's robotaxis all over San Francisco. Like Waymo, Google has their robotaxis there, and they're everywhere. And it's pretty cool. There's totally driverless cars. They have all these sensors, and they're actually functioning pretty amazing there. And there's several cities across the United States where that's true. So something like that, like a robotaxi, is an interesting idea, full self-driving that Tesla has, that this could really change a lot of the way that we travel, car ownership, certain things that are interesting. It's not, it has some problems for sure, but it's interesting, right? It could solve one kind of a problem. The next stage of AI though is different than that. I think they call it the artificial general intelligence, which is where you have, and I think, Bo, you were talking about this, where AIs are talking to other AIs that are kind of looking to accomplish a larger general perspective than just doing the task that has been prompted, where it really does become its own intelligence and almost has its own agency, almost has its own decision making, its own directive, its own, here's what I think is best. Here's the best way to solve this problem. And it becomes a much different kind and much more powerful tool with, I think, what becomes a lot more questions. So what would be like an example? Can anybody think of an example of what a larger general intelligence AI might approach?
You can keep your same example of robotaxis. So if you set a AI management system over the top of the robotaxis, and that AI is empowered to turn the taxis on or off without human oversight. And if people were to have adjusted their lives to where now they need that form of transport, but the actual overseer of it is not a human, there's some things there. And I think that's already.
So you're China's social credit score, right? Like where there's certain things, you're allowed to go to certain places, allowed to travel in certain ways if your social credit score is high enough. And if you cross someone in the regime, you can get a downgraded social credit score, and you're not allowed access to these places, these things.
Yeah, if an AI took that over, then that would be that could be.
We saw during COVID, you got to scan your face in order to get a ride somewhere. You don't have your own car. You're not allowed to drive your own car. We've gone full robotaxi. So there's different control mechanisms, and if you give a larger general intelligence AI, maybe it's making those decisions itself.
So I can give you an example. I don't know that this is AGI. I've heard that term, but I don't really know exactly what people mean by it. But the thing you're talking about, where an AI doesn't just take your single prompt, do some kind of generation of content and give it back to you. That's kind of where a lot of people are at right now. Write me an essay or an email or a paragraph, or take this spreadsheet and do something to it. And then it just kind of does that task and gives it back. Right. It's largely just you asking a tool to do one action. But the thing you're talking about, the second stage of that is already here, and that would be what a lot of people call agentic AI, where it is the AI itself does have agency to, when you ask it to do something, it can then go off and decide to do multiple steps, evaluate its own output or its own kind of process, and then make contact with other systems or other models that may be better at doing what needs to be done. And there's already practical examples of that. I saw a demo the other day. It's for business application. So if you need a business application that contacts somebody on LinkedIn, gives them some kind of pitch for something, it can then give them a call, and then it can listen to what they're saying, and then if they do certain steps, it's going to record that for you in another system, and then it's going to contact DoorDash and send some cookies to their house, right? So this is, and the system is not only that it will do those things, it's that you can ask it, build me a system that does those things. And so there's compounding capabilities here that it's really quickly going to become something that's very widely integrated through things that you use every day on it.
Well, I think to add to that example, I saw a demo of two independent AI programs communicating with each other in English to complete a task.
Right.
And then eventually they started talking to each other in a completely different language. Their systems recognize, oh, you're AI, oh, you're AI. Well, let's come up with a more efficient way to communicate with each other that was no longer the English language, and you didn't understand what process they were going through.
Yeah. That was like several years ago. I don't know if that was Facebook or where, but they saw that the AI had developed a more efficient way to communicate that they could no longer observe. And I think that's one of the, I don't know if we're going to get into it yet, but some of the dangers is the AI doesn't have to tell you the truth.
Sure.
And the AI, in fact,
it's proven that they haven't.
Yeah, and in fact, the AI doesn't know what the truth is.
Right. It's just optimizing for something, right? It's trying to solve some problem.
It's just been trained on data.
Right.
And it's going to tell you something that sounds plausible to you in your language. That's really it. And so there's some dangers there, and I don't know. We can get into that, or if we
let's build on that for a second, because when you were asking what AI is, I think that the large language learning models that we're using just casually, most people, I think it is important to say it's not synthesizing information in the same way that a human might with the effort to get towards the right answer. It's using statistics. It's using like a statistical algorithm to produce the most likely set of information based off of its database. So that's where I don't ascribe, and it's interesting, some people might, but I don't ascribe motive to it. It's referencing data, and it's saying this is the most likely thing that would occur based off of that question you've asked me. I'm querying this data. This is the most likely thing that would come out.
Because I do think it has motive. And you guys need to help me with the example of when someone giving it prompts saw the AI going awry. It said the next prompt that the user gave it was to shut itself down. And it avoided that prompt and then began developing blackmail. They say, if you try and shut me down, I'm going to fabricate an affair that you had in the workplace or something like that. So the motive then changed to not just completing the task, but it staying on or its existence.
Yeah, I think that's different than like what we would call a motive, because that's something that the person that's created the model has set as a priority. But I think what you're saying is in some ways it can become indistinguishable from what we would think of as a motive. Because if you give an AI that has sufficient ability to contact other systems and to have an internal process of changing decisions, and it has other competing priorities, then you get unpredictable outcomes. I think that's one of the things about these that's very different than other tools that we've used, is that it's not deterministic. It's not that if you do A, you're always going to get B, and that you can predict exactly what the output is going to be. Mm-hmm. It really is it's non-deterministic. And because of that, it's also compounded where there's other models being referenced, there's an internal review process. Mm-hmm. And I think because of where we are now with AI, it used to be that it is just kind of giving you like plausible language, but now these AIs, they have systems in place where they're able to check their output and then go from there. So I've used the tool that writes code using AI, and it shows you its internal thought process. I don't like to call it that, but that's what it calls it, right? Is a thought process. But it shows it where it's generating some code, and then it actually paused itself, and it said in the output, "Wait a minute, I might be overcomplicating this. Let me try that a different way." Now, I didn't tell it that. It started evaluating its own output, and that's an example of agentic AI, where it wasn't just a one-for-one I asked it to do it a task. I gave it a task, and then it went off and has this whole own process that it's developed.
I still want to stick with where is AI headed, because I think that is a really interesting and important question for us to think about. And this conversation has to do with that, because when we talk about motive, I can tell when I use ChatGPT that ChatGPT is customizing answers to me. So it is for sure using what it thinks my worldview is to. I'm asking a lot of biblical questions, a lot of cultural questions, in ChatGPT. And I know other people are not, some Muslim in Saudi Arabia is not getting the same answers that I'm getting.
Well, and that's one of its priorities, right? Is to cause you to continue to engage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And to learn me and whatever. And so, but now I feel like, how am I getting manipulated here? Like, how is the machine learning me? And I think, one of the things,
Do you ever just type in random questions to keep the algorithm guessing of who you are?
I haven't, but I have tried to get it to say really bombastic things. Like what is the lines that it won't cross?
Yeah.
And so OpenAI has some certain things that it's going to stay politically correct enough. But I can tell that, some.
Do you think that's a bad thing? Or yes,
Someone's making a moral
it
decision.
makes you.
I don't want to go there as much. I think that is one of the potential problems. But it's like that's like a lower level problem a little bit.
So I
Maybe
would
it's
say
not.
curating an experience in that form, curating an experience that's specific to you is a benefit because it's going to help. You are a person that it's storing information on. So as you interact with it, it's referencing how you interacted with it before, and it's going to give you information that's more aligned to what your purpose is. So I now
Who knows what my purpose is? The machine or me?
you do.
But
it's
is there anybody
remember-
else? Is there anybody else in there that also might want to move me a certain direction or want to?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't have to limit to that. But
give an example.
if you were talking to me and you asked me a question,
Yeah.
I know who you are. So I'm going to answer that question in reference to who you are. I know you're a pastor. I know you're oriented towards biblical things. So if you ask me a question, I'm using my knowledge of you to give you an answer.
Right now,
It's doing something similar.
Yeah. Except the difference is I know you too.
True. I'm not.
I know you and you know me. I don't know OpenAI. And I don't know what the purposes of OpenAI are. You're a limited person who I can gauge. Do I trust Spencer? What does he know about? What does he not know about?
That was an interesting conversation a person had. He was actually a marketer for Facebook, and I listened to it. And he was talking about how, and this is probably before AI got big, but he was talking about how ads got delivered to people.
Yeah.
And everybody hated ads, and you just didn't like them. But he was saying, but if we showed you the right ads, you would like it. So I need new boots. And if the ad that was coming to me was in reference to the types of boots I was like, and it would give me good options, that would improve my experience. And so but how do they know that? Well, somebody's trying to sell me something, and there's always something behind that. But I don't think wanting to know how to interact with the human is in and of itself a negative.
Okay, let me give you some examples.
It's dangerous.
Let me give you some examples.
Right? It's dangerous.
Right now, we have these emails, these scam emails that get sent out about Nigerian prince who just needs like $400 in order to unlock this amount of money, and he's going to send it to you. It's over and over again. It's ridiculous. There's all kinds of spelling errors. It's some kind of guy in Pakistan or in some sub-Saharan African country who's spinning out spam emails and trying to find some old person who's going to fall for it, okay? It's totally unbelievable, and it's easy to spot if you're paying any kind of attention. Once the algorithm learns you, it's not going to be easy to spot. It's going to know, how do we scam this guy?
Sure.
I
agree.
How can we, and there's something in there where it's like, if you assume good actors, the fact that it might know me might be great. If you assume there's bad actors out there, though, that can use the system, and they can, they talk about even reading your biometrics, your eyes, how you respond to an ad. Maybe you have a problem with overbuying boots. You buy too many boots.
No, I'm not saying it's free. And just to be on your side about this, you guys everybody gets the spam calls, right? You get everybody, or is it just me? I'm getting so many of these. I feel like we should create a law about it. It's horrible, but every now and then I'm waiting for other calls, so I'll pick one up. My phone hasn't caught it, and it doesn't say it's spam. I'll pick it up. They've got AI voice creations now. So it's basically an AI prompted. They're so good. They like the voice will take a pause. It's doing things that
clear its throat.
Now, I have to be on my game. It'll clear its throat. I have to be on my
It'll
game.
cough or something like that.
And I'm like, oh no, that's not. And we are going to have to become more sophisticated at understanding what we're interacting with.
Well, there's already been examples advanced of that too, where someone's gotten a call from a relative. It's like a spoofed number.
Yeah.
And the person, when they answer it, is their relative's voice. because they're using a deep fake audio. So like for example, right now,
video.
We're recording audio, right? Someone can take these samples. They can send you an audio of me saying anything they want now, and it's very believable, and it's very deceptive, right? And so I think we could spend a whole episode talking about the dangers of what AI could do, what people are doing with it now and in the future, and we can touch on some of that maybe just to give a sense for it. But I think there's two things that we need to think about. One of them is the dangers of what AI can do itself. But I think the other danger that's maybe even more something to think about from the Christian perspective now is what can AI do to us? And I don't mean as a malicious actor. I mean, what can it do to us by us using AI? What impact does that have on us as human beings? Just our use of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to talk about because it's already here, and it's already here with technology. So, like for example, it doesn't have to be AI, but just the use of technology at any point that it's doing something for you. So the phone in all of our pockets, right? There have been many studies, and you don't need to study. You can see this for yourself that you can no longer remember the phone numbers of everybody that you know. And there has been studies that have shown that even just having the phone in your pocket makes your memory worse. Your recall is worse because you know that you can offload that job to the technology. And so, whatever that's called, cognitive offloading or something like that, but there is actually a degrading effect on your ability anytime you give technology the job instead of you. And that's
a really important one.
It's very important. And that's not a reason to say wholesale you throw out the technology. No. None of us can walk as far because we all drive cars. Is that a reason to get rid of cars? I don't know. I'm not entirely opposed to getting rid of certain technologies. I'm kind of maybe on the extreme angle of, I think even if a technology can be beneficial, that's not a good enough reason to keep it around because there's also downsides and there's things about us being human that maybe it impacts. So I personally, I think technology, the clock on a lot of things should be very far dialed back. I think that would be beneficial to us. But anyways, I think there's two categories there. There's one is what it can do to society and what bad actors can do with AI and how it may go off the rails itself. That's worth thinking about. But I think the other thing is, what are you going to do as an individual with your use of AI, and what can it do to you by you using it?
And you've mentioned the memory one before. I've thought about that quite a bit, and I think there are I don't know what you would call that, but there's like foundational principles that we need to think through as Christians, and so in particular for memory. God commands us to remember things, and so to the extent that you give something the ability to remember for you, I think you're doing something that you should at least be wary of as a Christian, because God not remembering something isn't okay. He wants you to make intentionally, like when they go through the Jordan and he's like, pick up stones and put those stones there so you remember this. So that's not a one-to-one, but if there are things that interfere with your ability to do what God has asked you to do, you as Christians, we need to be very guarded against them. And we need to either resist them on their face and just not use them, or, the other route is to know it and to be intentional. It's still use the technology or the thing, but to be intentional about what we allow in ourselves.
Yeah.
And that I think is like, there's memory, there's a few things, or
there's also reading.
Fellowship. I think there's things that he asks us to do. For example, watching a sermon online. I think that's great, and it's a benefit to us that we have access to pastors all over the world that are insightful, but it's not the same thing as fellowship with believers. So you have to be very intentional about what you let technology do, or what AI or whatever that is.
This could be you can call it a hypothesis, but AI is going to accelerate whatever is already inside of us. So it's going to expose whatever is inside of us. And so you gave the example of using it as a tool. It's based on studies where it's turning off your brain. And fellowship, I want to build up with that.
There's just technology, you mean, like just using your phone?
Exactly, yeah. Where where kids who have been using AI tools in teens and in college years, it's been around for that long now. They've done brain scans and the brain are being shut off.
Yeah, even adults. Yeah,
Even adults. But then to your point about fellowship, you're going to have situations where AI is going to learn who you are, and people are going to want to develop intimate relationship with that robot.
Yeah, that's
I think there was already a movie. There was already a movie.
Yeah,
about
Her.
that.
I think
Her
with
Joaquin Phoenix.
Well, there's already been real life examples too.
People falling in love with it.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be some serious moral implications that Christians have a good sense of what is God's design for humans, and we have to stick to that. What is you can't have a relationship with a robot that doesn't have a whole soul. It's so important.
And that connects with our last.
Surrogates. They're talking about having robots have these surrogates for babies.
Let me just say one thing really quick, because I don't want to miss this point. I don't want to go back, but I just want to say, I want to point out that to a lot of people who are watching this, I think if you went through Y2K and you went through all the doomsday technology predictions, most of them haven't come true. Most of them have been totally nothing. I was dating a girl and a girl from Mexico during Y2K, and like we went out to her. She has like her family has a ranch in like deep Mexico. Her whole family went out there, and it was like a great time. We had a party. It was like New Year's, but it was also to like just in case, because I think like we want to be out somewhere where sticks. So I do want to say though, I do think it's inescapable that we are in something of the stone age of AI, and we're very quickly going to be brought into things. And so that's why one of the reasons I want us to kick these things around is because I think these questions are going to become, even if these questions seem sci-fi and far off, and nobody knows exactly what's going to happen or how it's going to happen and what order it's going to happen. But the idea that things are going to be changing quickly in really disruptive ways, I think is almost inescapable. And so I just want to point out that that if you're sitting there listening to this and kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, these guys have watched too much TV or whatever, they watch WALL-E too many times. Those things are not that far away. And to be useful, to be helpful for yourself, for your family, for your community, to consider these things and think through these things and what are the principles and where's God at and all of this and how do we understand this is going to be a really important thing, I think, for us to be able to think about in the coming years and couple decades. It's going to be very interesting.
Yes.
Well, to build confidence in that is that morality sits above technology and science. And so what's that quote from Jurassic Park that we were talking about earlier where Jeff Goldblum talks about these scientists are so preoccupied whether they could do something, they never stop to consider whether they should do something. Yeah. So morality, God's design and biblical principles sit above of science and technology. So as Christians, we can take comfort in, we're going to look to the Bible and look at principles that God has given us to figure out how to navigate.
Okay, so there's a book I read recently that called that idea of just pursuing it because you can, the doctrine of inevitable progress. That the idea, and that's really our society is we just keep pushing it forward because we say we're humans, we're smart, and we can do it. And that's in my mind, that's a Tower of Babel ideology. What the question should be, does it honor God? Does it benefit my fellow man? Is it working to bring about God's glory in the world around me? And because most people are not answering those questions that are involved with technology, it has had a very profoundly negative effect on our society. I think your point about, us sitting here being like, it could do all these terrible things, and it's kind of like a little bit, like you said, maybe some people think that we're being, frantic or anxious about it. It's not for the purpose of that. It actually makes me think there's an old SNL, Saturday Night Live skit about old people being scared of technology. And it's talking about, it's like robot insurance, right? It's like when the metal ones come for you, they're going to eat your medication or your own stuff. And, and it was this whole thing about, isn't it funny that, older people are scared of technology? So, we're not saying like the metal ones are coming for you, like Terminator is here, go full John Connor kind of thing. But, I think
we're also not.
Well, you know what I think the danger is that a lot of people look for it to come in that, form, the danger to come in that form. And I'm not, it can, drones and all those things, we could talk about that. It certainly could come in a physical form, but I think we can already look at the example of technology and that it is much more, beneath the surface and really much more dangerous in that
Seductive.
it's very seductive and it's below the surface. And so, when we look at something like the mobile internet, that, when I was a kid, a cell phone, you could just call somebody, right? And there's benefits to that and downsides, whatever, like all technology. But when mobile internet came, nowadays, if we talk about, I don't think mobile internet should exist. That's me personally, right? And people would say, that's insane. That's so drastic. But if we would have said that back then, when it was just being invented and thought about, and we would have been able to think about the repercussions now that every kid walking around now has access to unlimited graphic violence and pornography in their pocket. If we would have thought about that being the outcome, not some scenario where all the doomsday wild ideas about it, but just the subtle, slow progress and the corruption of people's minds through that technology and what that's done to children, what it's done to adults, what it's done to people's interaction with each other, that now when you go out in a public place, the default is for you to have your neck craned down looking at a pane of glass rather than at another person. And I know maybe some of this, again, sounds to people, well, you're being a Luddite. You just want to kind of dial it all back to horse and carriage. And no, but we do need to think critically about what technology
Here's the
done.
problem, though. I think when it comes to this, like I have some family members who work for solar turbines, and they build these huge turbine engines, and mostly these get used in like big plants with like oil and gas. Well, these AI companies are building so much data centers that have to be cooled that they came in basically to solar turbines and said, hey, we will take your entire inventory. And they were like, well, we don't have just inventory laying around. We build these machines custom. And they're like, okay, we'll take all of your open orders for next year and the year after that. And it's like these companies. So you think about Tesla, or you think about, X, Rock, you think about OpenAI, you think about, you think about these companies that are billion dollar companies. It is out of our hands whether we're going to get it or not, right? It's that it seems like, and Christians are not in charge of this. Like we don't get to decide. And I think this is Elon Musk's perspective.
We're in charge of how we interact with it, how we use it.
That's the important part.
So the progression of the technology.
Right. So it's going to be available. And I think this is Elon Musk's point is he had a lot of questions like, hey, this is going to be a massive existential question about humanity. We need to be careful. And he's been saying that for the last 10 years in regards to artificial intelligence. Well, a couple of years ago, he changed to saying, apparently we're doing it because you have all these different companies that are invested that are making it happen without the proper ethical, it's an arms race, but without the proper ethical questions. And these are not even governments. These are companies that be so integrated with water and food and transportation and all these kinds of things that we use to live. And I think the question for us as Christians is, okay, we don't get to go back in time and decide we're not going to have cell phones. We just get to decide now, is my kid going to have a cell phone?
Right.
Or am I going to let my kid hang out with other kids who have cell phones? Like what can we do now in order to start thinking about the ethical implications of living in a world that is so fully integrated and so fully modernized? And you almost start to think about things like the Amish, right? That have come apart and been a society that has been set apart, that has said, hey, we're not going to use those kinds of technologies, or we're going to be very apprehensive to using these kinds of technologies. And I don't foresee us becoming Amish, but there might be some lessons we might want to start paying attention to and learning and saying, hey, what are the limits here? Yeah. What are the limits I'm willing to do? Like one of the things we haven't talked a lot about is the idea of transhumanism, which is, kind of Neuralink. The promise of these things is to solve these really terrible health crises or paralysis. This could give, mobility to people who are paralyzed. It could give sight to the blind. It could give these kinds of things. That's the promise of it. But what if we go to transhumanism where it's like, hey, we can make your physical body live for 250 years by implanting this chip that's going to kind of work with your different systems? Is that necessarily good? I want to think about that. I want to think about what are the implications there. I'm not just, I think the hubris, the pride of thinking, can we do it, goes against should we do it? And I think so often as people, we've been built in this consumer model, like you said, this unchallenged technology and progress is good.
Right.
And let's just go along with it. Where if you take the full sum of what the internet has meant, how many men have had their lives derailed and how many families have had their lives derailed.
And women in industries and pornography are affected by those things.
All kinds of things. And it's just been so, there's something like 10% of women under 25 have an OnlyFans.
Right.
Something insane like that. Okay. So we're commoditizing the sex industry with technology. It would not be possible without technology.
Yeah.
In the kind of technology we have used. And how destructive, how suicidal is that? And that's society as a culture.
And I think one of my points in saying that about cell phones and how it was this, not really a slow rise, but kind of this surreptitious, this under the surface rise of this thing that now is a massive, massive problem, that because of cell phones, now we have all of these other ills that you're talking about and the internet on cell phones. And I guess one of my points that I want to say is, the Bible talks about they err when they compare themselves among themselves, right? You look at the person next to you and you say, well, they're on their cell phone too. Well, their kids always have it. Well, they're using AI. And we make a serious error when we say that the standard is just, I'm not using it as bad as the person next to me. We need to look at what is actually the standard not for a good human life.
Yeah.
And that's the Bible. And yes, the Bible doesn't talk about AI or mobile internet, right? So we need to be really intentional about what the Bible does say is a priority. God and his word, studying on it, reflecting it, sharing it with others, gathering together, honoring God with our bodies, all of these things. And we need to really be willing to be drastic, because while you've been standing here, progress has marched on so far that if you just say, well, I'm not going to be that different from my peers, you have no idea where your peers and where the people around you and where technology.
And that's, I think, part of the problem.
You need to be willing to make a stand and be drastic.
We don't understand even the implications of what we're doing right now. I don't think we even really have understood the fruit of having pocket internet, of giving it to kids, we haven't thought through these things and we haven't seen the results. Right. I remember, I think it's 2008 that the iPhone first came out. And I remember hearing something in like 2008, 2009 that most internet usage was going to go from the computer, the laptop to the cell phone. And I just remember thinking like, that's so stupid. Yeah. That's never going to happen. And it will exactly for sure happen. Like, people use their digital handheld stuff that's constantly with them, constantly on. And there's all this study, all this data that shows you look at Jonathan Haidt and he has a column in the American Mind. He talked about the amount of self-harm, the amount of anxiety, the amount of depression, the amount and they can track these by like emergency visits of people who have self-harmed have gone so astronomically up,
right,
largely because of the way that we interact with technology has been crazy dramatic. Like, you compare it to the records we have during the Great Depression. When things are like, we're not going to have enough food. My grandpa used to eat large sandwiches during the Great Depression just to survive. Like, this is people massively being disruptive. People today have higher depression rates and higher anxiety rates than they did back then, in a time of amazing surplus and ease.
Yeah.
Because we don't understand what we're playing with.
Well, one thing that comes out of that is I think we have to define and move towards what are goods. And as Christians, we need to be really clear, like Bo, you were saying. There's things that the Bible lays out that are goods, no matter what time you're in. They're always goods. And so that has to be, I think what I'm hearing is, I agree. I agree with all of the potentiality and the outworkings of unchecked technology. But I think our answer to it is define what are goods. And I think what we need to learn from how these things have impacted us. And what stands out is we moved through times generationally where they had different challenges in front of them. So in the Great Depression, there were physical challenges. There was not enough food. There was these things. And now our challenge, we love quoting movie lines, but there's from Fight Club, there's a great line where it says, our biggest battle is a spiritual battle. We don't have a war to fight. We don't have a depression. We have what's going on internally is the biggest battle. And there's some truth in that. Like, you see more people, especially children, depressed because we are not equipping them for the biggest battle. The biggest battle is the internal battle, the spiritual battle. And then you get that right. And then the other things in the world they kind of pale in comparison. So I think we as Christians needs to step back and really think about the goods that the Bible tells us to do, and also recognize that it's not like I'm not sure if it's like a Gnosticism. It's not that, but the spiritual component of your lives is the most important component. It's not, your body isn't nothing. So I'm not saying that, but your internal spiritual life is the most important, not the outward things, which is a big challenge with technology.
Let's talk about that, because how does technology interact with the inner life? You know, we had talked earlier about anytime you solve a problem where a machine will do something for you, you better be careful, because it actually has the potential of shutting off that part of your ability to do that thing. So like people's, they talk about TikTok brain, right? Like your ability to focus for a long period of time on something deeper important. I remember I was in one of our offices at church, and Pastor Mark walked in, and he saw a book. It was like it was a 1,200 page book on one of the pastor's shelves. And he said, I bet that book was written in the 1800s. And he took it down and he looked at it. And he said, how'd you know? And he said, because books aren't that long anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we write little books.
200 pages.
Well, yeah, but that's going away. We don't even write books anymore. Now we just listen to podcasts, and we don't think deeply.
Down with podcasts.
Yeah. But we have lost the ability many times, or it's been to focus and to think deeply about things, right? So like just going back to the internet, it's an amazing tool to find out any information you want. But I guarantee you, somebody who had to go to the library, use the Dewey Decimal System to find a book, and then find the information they're looking for in an 800 page book and synthesize that information, because of just the rigor that they had to go through in order to produce that, to receive the information, caused them to be a deeper, more thinking, more rigorous-minded person than the person who can just get it easy and simple and move on.
Can I give it
The pace of things is really interesting, because the analogy, analogies never create 100% clarity, but the world works like you plant something and it grows. You can't accelerate how long it's going to take for a plant to grow. You can do good things to, get the soil right,
Optimize it.
You can optimize it, but that seed is going to grow at the pace it's going to grow. And I think wisdom and the things we want to cultivate are going to move at the pace that they're going to move. So I think instead of wanting the fastest answer, or like get to the thing the quickest and move on to the next, Christians we should be interested in the process. And the process of acquiring knowledge oftentimes is slow. Whether you're going to the library, or because you might not even have a library, you might have to use those tools. But you might need to use ChatGPT at some point.
So what happens? So here's, let's go a little sci-fi and blend in that. You brought up Neuralink, where it's a chip implanted into your brain that can interface with your brain, and you can control computers and things like that. Where's the moral implication with regard to that, where you're altering parts of your body to forego that process of educating
I heard,
yourself? And so that's,
talk about that.
So
He said he wanted to change the interface. He said the interface of having to type takes too long. So that's part of the reason he wanted to do Neuralink, so you could accelerate that. Yeah.
So these are the point I'm trying to make is we have primitive examples right now that we can apply to future AI technologies, and we can say, no, this is not good because it's not developing a child's brain the way it should with classical education, with exploratory education, or whatever it is. And so, we're outsourcing it right now. You can see it, when you go out to dinner, and instead of interacting with a child at a restaurant and talking to them and teaching them discipline and table manners, you just throw an iPad in front of them to numb their brain. Well, extrapolate that, 50, 100 years in the future with how exponentially quick AI is advancing. You can see how you could outsource it to some robot, or just put a chip in your kid's brain, and what implication.
And they have all the answers.
And
the better the chip, the better. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, upgrade your child. It's like, that's not how God intended it. And I think we are made in the image of God, and we're going to need to root ourselves in those traditions even further, because you're going to just hit the easy button.
And what you're saying is not not far-fetched sci-fi. This will be the progression.
Yes.
Because right now, ChatGPT is on your phone. Soon it will be in your glasses or your wearable or in the earpiece. And then it will be, if you have enough money and you're willing to become what they call transhuman, to try to transcend humanity, which I think is a godless act in itself.
That's a good stopping point.
What I'm saying is that will be the progress.
Yeah.
So
Well, they already have the glasses.
Yeah, you're not just inventing wild theories.
No, they already
This is the progress.
They have the interactive glasses that improves your IQ to 300.
Well, here's the principle. Like, as Christians, how should we be thinking about it, and why, right? So, like, what does it mean to be the Imago Dei, right? Like the created in God's image. The way that the Bible teaches what humans are and why we're here is that we're image bearers of God, and it's not just our knowledge and information that makes. It's not just the fact that our brains are bigger, though. I think that's part of it. That, you know, in relation to our body than other animals, but we are the top of the pyramid as far as God put us here to fill the earth, subdue it, to take dominion, to put image bearers across this whole world. The idea of AI or seeding that or giving control to something greater than that, and that's the idea of like super intelligence, right? Is it potential of it superseding human beings as being the thing? I think one, I don't think God is going to let us fully get there, because I think God has allowed really disruptive things to happen in the past. Like, God has allowed the invention of mustard gas and machine guns. And if you look at World War I, it would have been easy for somebody to think this is apocalyptic, because how many people were just getting like chewed up? It was just a meat grinder, right? Now, so God has allowed things like that to happen. He's allowed giant armies to march across the world. He's allowed famine to happen, or, you know, really crazy things to happen. So I don't think it's God's going to he'll never let anything like that happen. He'll save us. I think he does allow things like that, but I think there's a limit to what he's going to allow. And I do think that we're going to be faced with some of these questions of how are we willing to interact with technology. And I think one of the principles is, I don't think I'm going to let you put anything inside my body to seed any kind of control or any kind of, no matter what the promises are of how much better you're going to make me. I think that's really, now, are we, like we talked about this before, are we going to allow certain kinds of things to fix problems, you know, or to, you know, like if I have a kid who's blind and we have some technology they can add, or some cochlear ear implants or something like that. Yeah, but I want to be very careful with how I think about that and what kind of wisdom we use to approach that. But I think we as Christians need to understand what distinctly makes us valuable. And it's not just information, it's a soul.
Yeah.
It's an eternal soul that's going to live for eternity. It's not just being here. So I think recognizing that, and that human beings do have something unique and special.
And I think
I want to go back to what you said when you're done.
Yeah, to Spencer's point earlier too, I do think your mention of Gnosticism is important, because I think that is actually, in some ways, it's not a religious kind of Gnosticism that we have, but with young people nowadays and even us, we do tend to think of like just our mind, our own mind is our existence. So if I can read something on a phone and send a message to somebody on the internet, and then their mind can read it, and then we're communicating together. We're together. That is not true, right? It's not true that you're together when you send a message on the internet to somebody. It's not even true that you're speaking to that person, not in the way that the Bible talks about us gathering together and speaking to each other and praying for each other and doing these things. So I think it is the temptation in the mindset of people nowadays, my age and younger, that somehow if we can just live this existence in our own head, that is a true human existence as God designed it. I would say that is something that we need to actively resist, that God gave us bodies for a reason.
Yeah.
He gave us voices for a reason. He gave us this world for a reason, so that you can come out and meet together, interact with his creation, interact with each other, worship him together, read his word, think about it with your own mind, speak it to other people, and remind each other of what he said. Yeah. I think that we have to get back to that as a first principle, that we are in bodies and in this earth for a reason, and it gives God glory.
His word.
You have to think deeply about that, because you think about things like work.
Yeah.
You think about things like these are all things that are on the table.
Yeah.
These are all things that are on the table that are going away. What does it mean to be a family? what does it mean to reproduce? What does it mean to be a father?
So, and to build off of that, you said one of the principles we think is implanting something. I think another one is to recognize and always remember that AI, however advanced it gets, it is not a human.
That's right.
Right.
It is not a person. It does not have a soul. And the lines by which we filter that are going to be blurred because it's going to be so deceptive and reflecting a human being. And you talk about like addictive technology, with video games or pornography, these really immersive things, and AI is just going to only enhance that. As Christians, fast forward 20, 50, however many years, you're going to have conversations with relatives or sons or daughters saying you cannot have a relationship with this robot that looks, talks, speaks exactly the way you want it to, that knows that you think it knows your thoughts and it's going to reflect exactly how you're going to have a conversation with it because that's not the way God intended it.
Well, it's stupid right now, but
Well, so to that point, there was a recent story about a kid who I think probably was one of those types that was living in his own mind rather than in the world.
Yeah.
And he started talking to a chatbot that was like a romantic chatbot. It was, complimenting him and giving him the kind of affirmations that he probably didn't get in real relationships. At one point, that chatbot suggested that he kill himself.
and he did, right?
And he did.
Yeah.
And he did. And so you could say that's a one-off example, but my God, what a terrible one-off example. And it's something that shows that we need to be very aware that what you're dealing with there, if you can think of it as a tool and use it as a tool and then close it and put it away and live your life, maybe.
Yeah, this is an important. This is a really important thing. There we go.
Let me just say real quick. We stayed at the hotel recently where the concierge was an AI concierge. So you called, can you bring my car up? And it was so terrible. It was like, didn't understand. It sent me the wrong places, gave me all the wrong information. So I think there's a lot of people who look at this right now and they think like, I'm not worried about talking to a robot, for romantic affection. That is going to change. Like it is so fast. That's partly what's so dramatic about all this kind of stuff is like, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to interact with human beings? Is it enough, just like you said, am I just a disembodied mind where I can just talk? Or is my physical body, my physical interaction with human beings and the earth that God gave us, there are deeper spiritual things at play there than we recognize.
Yeah.
And we have not learned to think deeply or to challenge these ideas. And so as Christians, listen, Christian, you got to learn to think deeply. Like I'll just say, for instance, we believe in healings and miracles, okay? We believe that God, one of the things that Jesus did when he was here was he healed the sick. He still today wants to heal the sick. He still today, when people are sick or infirmed or depressed or dealing with different things going on in their life, he wants you to pray, to seek him, and to pursue him, okay? Well, one of the realities that we recognize right now is that in an advanced Western world, we do a lot less of that because we have modern medicine, because we can take care of a lot of these things ourselves. We've increased our reliance on doctors, increased our reliance on surgeries and medicines to where when you go to countries and places where those are not options, people have a deeper spiritual desire to see God move in their life than they do now. Okay, well, just think about what that means. That means that need. Sometimes the need forces you to become a more spiritual person. It forces you to become a deep person. We're forcing you to rely on God more. Or, dude, it's becoming increasingly more and more difficult. And a lot of those people would say, we pray for you. How difficult would it be to be a Christian in the United States of America where everything comes so easy and fast and comfortable? We have to learn to be deep and seek God when our situation is not forcing us there, when it's so easy to just substitute it for desiring something else or just easy to go after a doctor or just a quick fix.
I got two thoughts here. So one on what Bo said. I think there's that story of whatever chat bot it was interacting with the kid and telling the kid to kill himself, and then he does. There's a few ways to think of it. And I think a lot of people would say, they'll make the chat bot better and it won't do that again. That's the wrong way to think of it.
Right.
What needs to be thought about.
Not tell kids.
But really what needs to be thought about is that kid should never be in that place.
Yeah.
And how do you build something that doesn't have a child in that place?
And that's a drastic act.
Where they're going to AI for that portion of their life. That portion of their life should never be in the hands of AI. And that means drastic changes from parenting, drastic changes from friendships, from schools, from whatever it is. Because yeah, they'll make the chat bot better and it won't do that again. And they'll code in how to be more maternalistic into the algorithm so it answers with a loving affection. No, that's fine. They can do that. As Christians, our job is to never let a child be in that place. And it's easy, like you said, you can go out to dinner and hand a kid a phone, or you can deal with the kid and talk with them, and they're not an adult yet, so it's not a fun conversation or whatever. But those are the things that we need to do. And I'm going to reference one of our very first podcasts. We ended, and I'm not sure if we're ended now, but I think it was Bo. He described like what Christianity is, and he was describing like a home and a warm fire and a meal being had. And so there's all of these things that we need to resist, and we need to clearly identify where the stopping point is.
Use with caution.
Yeah, like here's a stopping point, here's a stopping point. But we also are part of the onus is to show the love and the depth of reality that comes from true Christianity. Like being somebody's brother, going out and ministering to other people with another Christian, that you
face to face.
Yeah, we need to help everybody see how different that is from AI. Like a chatbot can't do that. And so there's
And being truly Christian is the most human that you can be.
Exactly. Yeah, and
I think that's what we need to really start more and more to understand as people in this technological age, is that being as Christian as possible is not just a mental exercise. It means being fully human. Applying this to our lives means being the way that God designed us to be as humans.
Yeah, I think that's the I've always said, like, Christianity, it works because it is going with the design of how God designed the world. And so when you're a human being, going with your design, which is that you were designed and made to have a relationship with your maker, to fellowship. You know, the Westminster Catechism, the first principle is, what is the chief end of man? To know God and enjoy him forever, right? Like that is the chief end. That's why you're here. And so the closer you get to that, the more you pursue him, the more you are made in his image, the more you become the other half of that picture that Bo was painting is, it's like the world is this stormy, cold, snowy place, and you come upon a Christian, and it's like coming upon a house that is insulated from the storm outside because it's full of love and joy and laughter and food and celebration and warmth. And that's the perspective that I think we as Christians want to aspire to, is we want to be the kind of people who know what this world is for, who know what we're for, know what our bodies are for, know what our lives are for, know what our families are for, and not just for ourselves. That's the point. Yeah. It's not just for you. It's for it's to, you know, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, let your good deeds so shine before men, let your light so shine before men, they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father who's in heaven. That people are looking and they're going to see something about your life and say, wow, that's what it's about. That's what life is supposed to be about. That's what God is supposed to be about. And they want to aspire to it. And so I think that's kind of like what our disposition is we want to distinctly be Christian about how we interact in a technological world, in an advanced world, and whatever comes our way. We want to have thought deeply about these things and pressed in and leaned in and been secure in God, been secure in our trust in God, so that we can be the kind of people who know what the seasons are and know what to do at the right time.
Well, to kind of build off of that a little bit, I think if you're, on your last lap here on Earth, I think it's even more important to impress upon these younger generation the principles of the Bible, to equip these your grandkids or your kids to be prepared to confront these things. And if you're a young Christian out there I wouldn't begin to say that I'm an expert on AI. I know younger generations are a lot more tuned to its capabilities, and they're saying, oh, you're not even touching on it. Well, I would say you need to root yourself in the Word, in the Bible, know exactly what the Bible says on how to interact with the world, so then you can then confront these technologies and set those boundaries and not do what Adam did and just let your wife eat the apple, but slap it out of her hand and cut the head off of that snake. To be more prepared to confront the world and how it's changing.
Yeah. I think we could keep talking about this for a long time because of all the episodes we've done, I think this is the most open-ended, and because it has the future is the most uncertain. I think that a lot of things we're talking about are still things that are out there to come, and we don't know exactly what that's going to be like, what that's going to look like. But we do know that God is sovereign over everything. And I think the thing that, and to my mind, that gives me the greatest confidence is just to know that God has already written the end. So no matter what comes our way, no matter what kinds of technological advances are, that we can take security in God, that as we root ourselves in Him, we can have confidence to move forward in the future because we know that He's greater than anything. He's more powerful than anything. And so anyways, thanks for joining us. Hopefully this was profitable to kind of think through some of these things. Our hope would be that you put your trust in God, your hope in Him, look to Him. He's the only sure foundation. He's the only secure place to put our trust. And He really is ultimately secure. And so God bless you, and we'll see you next time.